The topic that I will be discussing today that is based on the concept of Sultanul Arfin Sultan Bahu about the nature and power, or in Arabic we call it as the fitra and the qudrat. So first of all, just to discuss a little bit that what is science, what we understand about the science, that it is basically the systematic study of structure of and the behavior of the physical universe, and we perform experiments, then we deduce some mathematical theories from that, and also predict the future phenomena based on that theories, and then we test it again and again, and by studying that behavior we observe the physical world. And this is all about what the natural sciences are, particularly the subject of physics. So what is the methodology of science? There can be a lot of discussion about its historical evolution, but in short I will just to take your attention that the modern scientific discoveries develop on previous knowledge and experiments, as well as the reasoning, the logical reasoning that we say the mathematics. However, for a theory to be a scientific, we don't need a very particular kind of logic. The only prerequisite or the requirement for a theory to be scientific is that it should be falsifiable, that you can test this theory, the experimental testation as well as the logical testation. The logical, when I am saying this, this logic means the mathematical reasoning, the mathematical tools, and these are two prerequisites, and if any theory fulfills these two requirements, we can call it a scientific theory. So next debate comes about the what questions science deals with. So when we are dealing about the subject of science, we should be very clear about it, and in short I can say that it deals with how physical universe works. It doesn't deal what is the physical universe. So the question of how, you should remember because I will relate this question when I will be concluding my talk. And it excludes the intangible things that we call about the particularly the subjective experiences, and for example the problem of consciousness. And particularly when we are quantifying the things, we stress on the experimentation as well as on the mathematical theories. A little bit discussion on what the capacity, or you can say the status of science is in the classical Sufi methodology or the classical Sufi thought. So I will give just one example, and that is on the importance of science by Hujjatul Islam Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, who says, and I quote, "Whoever thinks that to engage in a disputation for refuting such a theory like lunar eclipse is a religious duty, he actually harms the religion and weakens it. For these matters rest on demonstrations, geometrical and arithmetical, that leave no room for doubt." And this is a statement of a thinker 1000 years ago. So this is the classical Sufi thought about the physical sciences. Similarly, another quote I will like to quote here, and these quotes are from his very famous book, that is the Refutation of the Philosophers, the Tahafatul Philosopher, that is very much debated across the circles, particularly who are discussing with the Sufi philosophy, cosmology and science. "The greatest thing in which the atheist rejoice is for the defender of religion to declare that these astronomical demonstrations and their like are contrary to religion." So this is the happiness of atheist. Why? Because thus the atheist's pause for refuting religion becomes easy if he likes of the above argument for defending religion or rendered a condition for it to be a truth. So this is how he links the demonstrations or the experiment based sciences, or we can say the physical sciences, that how should be the attitude of a religious scholar toward these sciences. Now I will be coming towards the topic, and what is the concept of nature, or the I can say the physical world, or the fitrat in the concept of Imam al-Ghazali. And he quotes about the natural occurrences in the universe, that the continuous habit of their observations or the occurrences repeatedly, one time after another, that we observe in our world, that some things are repeating again and again, that we demonstrate our experiments again and again. This actually fixes unshakably in our minds the belief that this occurrence is according to past habit. So what we are deducing as a scientific law, Al-Ghazali says that this is nothing other than the habit of these physical things that we say. And since we observe the repetition of this phenomena, we deduce a particular pattern, and when we use this particular pattern to formulate a mathematical model, we think that this is something, some sort of a law, and this thing has to behave ever like this. So here I would try to differentiate the concept of power and the nature, the qudrat and the fitrat. And I will now come towards the concept of Sultanul Arifin, Sultan Bahu, to emphasize how we can differentiate. That he has repeatedly described the concept of power in his books. You can see many of his books which are available have been translated in many languages. And he says, I quote is one of his quote, he says, absolute monotheism is state of magnificence. There were neither 6 dimensions, nor below, nor above. It means that there was not physical universe. There was no space and time at that time, at that particular incident what he is talking about. It was only Zat of Almighty Haq present with his divine power. So the presence of that divine Zat is due to his power or due to his Qudra. That is not due to the Fitra, or that is not due to the laws of physics. Here power is beyond the concept of physical world and this concept of space and time. On another place he says, and I quote, from power of Almighty Haq, potent Zat, the voice of am I not your sustainer, alastu birabbikum, reached the ears of entire spirits. They all replied, yes, you are. The important thing here is that these listening and speaking, all these processes don't involve the physical processes of listening and speaking, because this is beyond the concept of physical world, and these all depend on the Qudra or the power. And on another place he writes that when someone attains perfect guidance, then he speaks from power of God. That very popular Hadith Qudsi, La yazalu abdi yatakarrabu ilayya bin nawafil, he refers towards that. And he hears from power of God's ear and sees from power of God's eyes. So that seeing and that listening is not based on the habits of the universe, or we can say not based on the merely the physical laws, the physical means, but that at that point the listening and speaking and seeing is purely based upon the divine power. So this is the synchronization actually with the divine attributes. At this stage, the seeing, listening and speaking goes beyond the means of the physical world. Similarly, he narrates another dialogue of a disciple and a master, and he describes that the divine self is ever subsistent due to his divine power. However, anything that has a start and end, anything that has a beginning and ending, it is linked with non-existent. It is linked with Adam. So this might seem a little bit strange if I would be talking this thing 100 years ago. But today all the students of physics know that the theory of Big Bang itself predicts that this universe came from nothingness. So being a student of physics, this is not something strange. The understanding the nature, then how we comprehend that what the nature is. The nature is created by power in the ideology of Sultan Bahu, what he describes. And the natural or physical world has the habit of repetition, what Imam Ghazali describes. And this habit actually seems to us, which we measure using the tangible means and the mathematical models, whereas the spiritual affairs are beyond this physical repetition and they are not bound to these habits. So Imam Ghazali presents the example of fire burning the cotton, that when we see this habit that whenever there is fire, cotton is being burned, whenever we put the cotton in the fire, it will burn again and again. We assume that this is the power of the fire which burns the cotton. He says no, this is not the power, this is the habit actually, which is being repeated. But there is no power with the universe that it will repeat again. So the power lies somewhere else. Here only we observe the habit, and there can be many instances when that habit is absent, and that is nothing strange. So the cause and effect relation, that is only bound to these habits. Allama Iqbal says in his lectures that the inner experience is only one source of knowledge, and the other sources are intuition and the history. So three sources of knowledge basically he is talking about, and I can categorize the history and the knowledge of nature both as the knowledge based on observation, but the knowledge of intuition, that is beyond the physical means. And similarly, when he calls the inductive reasoning, he calls that the birth of Islam is the birth of inductive reasoning, and he takes our attention that this is one of the important means to live our life. So what is the general principle? The general principle to live your life, that we have to obey the inductive reasoning to live this life, to live our day-to-day physical processes. However, there are certain areas when power comes to play its role. And there are historical examples, like we can say that one disobedience in Ghazwa-e-Uhud can totally change the results, and following the path given by the power can make those results which are beyond the comprehension of intellect, like we observe in Ghazwa-e-Badr. And here Iqbal says that अपनी मिल्लत पर क़यास अक़वाम मग़रिब से न कर कि ख़ास है तरकीब में क़ौम रसूल हाशमी. So this is nothing to hate anyone, but this is just to remember your own distinction, or you can say that your own speciality, that something you have, you should take care of that quality, and that specification is due to the synchronization with the attributes, with the divine power. So here I will make an analogy particularly for the students of science, that how they can comprehend this concept. And that is the example of quantum mechanics versus classical mechanics. That although we see that the observation of classical mechanics are well explained by the laws of the classical mechanics, but we know that those are not actually laws. The law is quantum mechanics. But on the scale of classical level, here we are sitting in our world, on the large scale phenomena, we can say that classical mechanics works very well. But if you talk about the law, that what actually law is governing the universe, that is the quantum mechanics. Similarly, what we observe in the day-to-day life, the repeated occurrences or the habits of the things, they seem to have a law, but that is a very bounded law. But what is the prime principle of the universe, the first principle, you can say in the language of philosophers or whatever, that lies with the divine power. And due to missing links, we know that when you are dealing with large scale phenomena, we don't have the links to link everything with the classical mechanics. And due to those missing links, we make the approximate models which we deduce from certain observations. So similarly, when someone don't has the link with the power, he can make his understanding using his intellect and using the repeated observations. But someone who has the power to make that link, his understanding and his knowledge must go beyond these limited to the 6 dimensions. So we can argue that it is the power which rules the world. However, due to missing links, we can explain repeating phenomena by natural or scientific laws. Even if we deduce something from power, that will be giving the same results which we observe due to the natural laws. Similarly, as we see that the quantum mechanics give the same results which classical mechanics gives on the large scale phenomena. Exceptions, what are the exceptions then? For example, I can take the example of the superconductors. That is a large scale phenomena, but we see the quantum coherence even on the classical scale. So that missing link, actually somewhere you can observe some phenomena where you can establish some sort of link of that power in this natural world. And these are the things which can be linked with some exceptions. For example, you can see the spring of Zamzam emerging from the feet of Prophet Ismail, or some other occurrences like that. So a little discussion about spirit and matter. Moving towards the conclusion, I will just quote Allama Muhammad Iqbal, that he says to Islam, matter is spirit realizing itself in space and time. So there is no duality. Just like there is no duality in classical and quantum mechanics, classical mechanics is just an approximation of the quantum mechanics. Due to those missing links, we follow the classical mechanics. So same, he tells us that this is an approximation, or you can say a reflection of spirit in the matter, and when you don't have those links, so you can use your intellect and live your life. This is what the religion teaches us. So what we can understand is that the power encompasses everything. There is no concept of nature or the repeated habits in the world of Qudrat. There is nothing bound to some sort of laws. They are only bound to the divine power. So anyone who is bestowed with the knowledge of missing links, he can predict some occurrences which are beyond the knowledge or the habit of this physical universe. So what I can contribute from this, my humble talk, in the discussions, the students or anyone who is interested in the discussion of the science and religion and philosophy, that is just a little question that I will be leaving here, that science claims to answer how, from where I started. I think the way forward is in answering the self-imposed question of science. For example, how the laws or habits, whatever you call, came into work, how they came into work, how they are created, how they are behaving, the laws themselves. So universe is behaving according to laws. So how the laws are behaving. So there are many discussions by physicists who also discuss these things, that maybe the laws of science or the universe, whatever we call them, they may be evolving themselves. So I think this debate should be on these areas where with the Sultanul Arifin, Sultan Bahu's teachings take us. And I think the day we search the answer of how for the creation of scientific laws, we would be able to understand the link between nature and power. Or the other possibility is there is constraint on methodology of science that restricts it to study itself. So this we have to decide, just as we can say that we are unable to describe the consciousness through the scientific means. So is there some restriction, that sort of restriction on the scientific laws? And with these few words, I will thank you all.